What's going on, guys? Dare here with Fantasy Football Advice, coming at you with another fantasy football video. And as usual, it's the trade targets. You know we're going to be talking about those buy low candidates and those sell high candidates. We're going to stick to the same formula, that being 4 wide receivers, 4 running backs, half of which you should buy low, half of which you should sell high. Before we do jump into the video though, make sure you are following both Nick and I on Twitter. If you want some one-on-one time with us, you have your start sit questions, maybe some trade questions, future outlooks, anything, contact us on Twitter. For those of you who were contacting me since last week, I was unavailable, been super busy, which is why I was unable to make a video last week, but it's a new week. Things are better side of the Cleveland Browns, and this offense is very much improved with Baker Mayfield under center, and that's one of the main reasons why Carlos Hyde is rising in value. The Browns can actually win games now, and their defense is legit, and when you're targeting a rusher, you want one on a team with a strong defense. That's how the value gets inflated, and in this offense, Carlos Hyde is the back getting all of the touches. He's coming off of a subpar game, but keep in mind that was against a super tough defense. And for the Browns to show that they can win against a solid team, that's super impressive. In fact, Baker should be undefeated right now. His only loss has been against the Raiders, which was a game that they should have won. And in that game, they still only lost by 3. So far, that's 3 consecutive games where the rush was not game scripted out. So I think this team and Carlos Hyde is going to hold a lot of value. One thing worth mentioning, I also like Chubb. I think he's very talented, better than Hyde in fact. So actually, if you want to buy low on him, stash him on your bench with the chance that Carlos Hyde gets injured, that could be a high upside pick for a very low investment. Now moving on, we have Aaron Jones of the Green Bay Packers. By far, he's the best back on this team. Jamal Williams has been averaging a mere 3.6 yards per carry the entire season. Meanwhile, Jones is averaging an astounding 6.1. And don't get it mistaken, it's not inflated by one game. His single worst performance when it comes to efficiency has been 5.7 yards per carry on the ground. So there isn't this one monster game that's throwing off of his actual averages. He's been consistently good. Now, obviously that's an unsustainable rate, but if you watch this kid play, he's the real deal, and it's only a matter of time before his opportunity share increases on this offense. And the big question mark has been protecting Aaron Rodgers. That's obviously a priority for this team. He's already banged up, and they need him healthy if they have any shot at reaching the playoffs. And Jamal Williams has been known to be the better pass protector, but Aaron Jones has a perfect pass blocking rating so far. You know who doesn't have a perfect pass blocking rating? Jamal Williams. It's a small sample size, but it is worth noting. Jones is also beginning to get more work in the receiving game. 3 targets this week, which was the same number that Williams had, and both of them caught 2 of those targets for 19 yards. So Jamal Williams, usually known as the better pass catching back, is not even separating himself in that area either. Meanwhile, Aaron Jones is looking good in all of these other areas, which means his value is going to increase. He's more than likely going to get more playing time as the season progresses. And if you can get him and monitor his production and his usage on the field, and as soon as it increases to somewhat more towards a bell cow role, I think you could have a potential monster in the future. Now onto the wide receiver buy lows, and we have Jarvis Landry. So juice. There's no denying Landry's a great receiver, and he's coming off of a mediocre performance, but he's consistent. He's as consistent as they come, and is currently ranked 9th in the league in targets. He's also seen an uptick in total targets by 7% since Baker Mayfield took over. Where does he fit in on your roster? Well, I'd safely say that he is the perfect wide receiver too, because his bad games aren't going to be those ones where you just get 4 points and you're going to completely demolish your team. His bad weeks are going to be more of what we saw last week, which wasn't a total disaster, but 11.9 points in PPR fantasy is actually not even inside the top 40 this season. It's crazy to think of where we're at, but I mean, we're 6 weeks in now and defenses still haven't shown up. So 11.9 points doesn't seem very small, but that's why now is the time to get him, because think of this. His next 5 games have the potential to be huge. So he faces the... I could really see this trade paying off for you in a matter of weeks. This is another one of those picks where you can just wait to purchase him because he's likely going to have another bad game against Baltimore. But after that and after the bye, his schedule does get a lot lighter. He faces New England, Indianapolis, Houston, and the Jets in a 4-game stretch where he will have some massive upside. What type of upside, you ask? Well, we've already seen him have a boom game where he had a 31-point performance just 2 weeks ago. Not many wide receivers in the league have been able to put together a 31-point performance, so we know that's in his ability. And these matchups, these 4 games that are going to be really good for him, he has that type of boom upside. And as it stands right now, nobody wants Corey Davis. They're sure as hell not starting him. And after everyone saw Tennessee get beaten by Buffalo, there's going to be everybody trying to unload all of their Titans at liquidated prices. And they're not only going to be off of Davis, but this offense completely. So that's why you should take advantage of it. Leave him on the bench this week, but down the road, when he starts to show some promise, you may have a potential starter. Now on to the sell high targets, and Kenyon Drake leads this list at the running back position. And I'm going to talk to you guys, you Drake owners out there. Now is your chance to sell. Not many people are going to want him, but you might find someone. I'd recommend trying to trade him in somewhat of a package deal, because everyone you send an offer 1-for-1 with Drake in it, they're just going to know you're trying to sell high, and they're just going to automatically decline. So you have to be a little bit smarter. It's not a secret that people are going to want to unload Drake, but it's a necessity. He's a huge risk. Every time you put him in your lineup, he's basically the Amari Cooper of the running back position. And as it stands, he scored 24.5 points, so that is huge. That's his best game of the season. So don't be a fool thinking that this means he's going to somehow become a bell cow now because he's the better back. We know that he's the better back. Gore is not good. For his age, yeah, he's impressive. But if they understand, Yeldon is in the RB1 conversation as long as Leonard Fournette is out, which means you probably killed it with your waiver ad. You got a RB1. But the thing you have to consider, it's short-term rental. Ask any James Conner owner what trade offers they declined 2 weeks ago, and I guarantee you they would accept that today. But in reality, you're not, because we all know Bell's coming back pretty soon. So the offers that you're going to be getting now aren't going to be high. Why? Because they know that his value is only going to hold temporarily. The same thing is happening with TJ Yeldon. As soon as Fournette comes back and he's healthy, nobody's going to want Yeldon. No one's going to trade for him. So why not suck it up for 2 to 3 weeks and lose out on that RB1 value that you have in order to get a piece that's going to help you long term and in the fantasy playoffs? What I would suggest doing is targeting a team that's maybe 1-4 and 2-3, a team that really needs to win right now, because those are the types of teams that are going to pay up for a short-term rental while they figure out how to improve their team by either trades or waiver additions. Because let's face it, if a team that's 1-4 turns into 1-6, they're gonna have a really tough time making the playoffs. So they may need a win right now while their injured players on the bench are going to get healthy. So target one of those teams, but don't give him away for peanuts, because Yeldon is still a high-end short-term rental. In a terrible game script last week, he put up some serious production, and on the season, he's actually a mid-grade RB1. I'm talking all weeks 1 through 5. He's a mid-grade RB1. That's pretty impressive, but me personally, I'd trade him for anything of significant value that I could get in return. Moving on to the wide receivers though, we have Tyler Lockett of the Seattle Seahawks, and I know a lot of you were wondering why I didn't include Lockett on the last video, and this is exactly why. Baldwin's coming off an injury and clearly wasn't going to come in with a 9-reception performance. Everyone should have understood that and been expecting that, but over the next few weeks, the tide is ultimately going to turn more in Baldwin's favor. The only caveat with that would be if he did have an injury or a setback to his health, then of course Lockett would retain that inflated value. But as long as Baldwin continues to get healthy, he's continued to be used and implemented in the game plan, Tyler Lockett's value is going to decrease. So me personally, I would sell him on his high. Last game it was in the afternoon, so a ton of people were watching, and Lockett had an amazing game. But not only that, he did it in a flashy way. When everyone's watching and you do it in a flashy way, best believe people are going to take notice. There's highlights out there. They're playing it on Sports Center, ESPN. Everyone saw it. And obviously we do love Lockett. He was on a ton of our late round wide receiver value lists, but you have to know when a player is exceeding expectations and when regression is likely incoming. That's what we see for Lockett, which is why now we believe is the perfect time to sell him. But just so you know, Tyler Lockett still will hold flex value with a healthy Baldwin in the mix, so I don't want you to be giving him up too cheap. A player that I am happy with you giving up for cheap is Devin Funchess, and me personally, I'm a huge Funchess fan, but his days as a starter in your fantasy lineup are over. Word is Olsen's coming back in week 6, and we knew the only reason Funchess was a buy low target in the past was because Olsen wasn't on the field, and the past 3 weeks he's done pretty well. I will say though, he's not coming off of a big game, and the wide receiver position is super deep, as I mentioned earlier in the video, but he's still averaging 13.6 points per game over the past 3 weeks, with his lowest total game being 9.3. So there is someone who you can make a deal with. Similarly to Kenyon Drake, I don't think he should be the main piece in the trade, but he could be someone that tips the scale. Obviously, if you're going to trade him 1-for-1, you're not going to get much more than a bench level player. So if you want anything of value, you're going to have to package him in. But I think he is a nice throw-in piece because people will still be under the impression that he could be a spot start wide receiver 3, when in reality, his production is going to be extremely hard to gauge as soon as Olsen returns, and will more than likely just be based on how many touchdowns he scores and which week he actually reaches the end zone. So those are the plays I try to avoid, and although you're not selling him at a super high point, I think his value is only going to continue to tank, so you may as well unload him while he still has at least a little bit of value. But alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. We really hoped you enjoyed. If you did like this video, please hit that thumbs up button. If you're new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you all for watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.